call. Good and back, good. All right, call the orders. August 22nd meeting. Meeting announcement, Wendy?
The New Jersey Open Public Meetings Law was enacted to ensure the right of the public to have advance notice of and to attend the meetings of public bodies at which any business affecting their interest is discussed or acted upon. In accordance with the provisions of this act, the Sparta Board of Education has caused notice of the time and place of this meeting to be published in the New Jersey Herald, the Star Ledger, tapintosparta.net, and notice of the meeting has been posted on the Sparta Township School District website.
Thank you. Roll call, Joanne?
Ms. Collier,
Here.
Ms. Gagnon,
Present.
Ms. McMichael, Mr. Pleshy, Ms. Sealander,
Here.
Ms. Serafino,
Here.
Dr. Serrano, Mr. Wood, Mr. Morris.
Here. Now if we can all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we're now going to convene the closed session. We'll be down there for approximately 1 hour for attorney-client privilege and other legal matters. Need a motion to go in closed session? Thank you. Second?
Second.
Joanne?
Ms. Collier,
Yes.
Ms. Gagnon,
Yes.
Ms. Sealander,
Yes.
Ms. Serafino,
Yes.
Mr. Wood, Mr. Morris.
Yes. Welcome, everybody.
Put the mic closer.
Mine's on. Joanne, can we get a roll call, please?
Ms. Collier,
Here.
Ms. Gagnon,
Present.
Ms. Sealander,
Here.
Ms. Serafino,
Here.
Mr. Wood,
Here.
Mr. Mars.
Here.
You didn't call me, Joanne.
Miss Dr. Serrano.
Here.
Okay, we're going to start tonight with a presentation from Dr. Beck. Make it quick.
Good evening, everyone. For those folks that are following the meeting at home, as we've been doing, this presentation you won't be able to see, obviously, from home, but this presentation is on our website, and it's under the Board of Education tab, the drop-down for Board of Education, and it's under Presentations. So tonight, I will be presenting on chronic absenteeism and our district's chronic absenteeism corrective action plan. I will start by defining chronic absenteeism. According to the New Jersey Department of Education, a student is considered chronically absent if the student misses 10% or more of the school days in session for which the student was enrolled. So just doing quick math with that, there are 180 days in a school year for students, and if a student misses 10% of those days, that's 18 days. They are at that point considered chronically absent, according to the New Jersey Department of Education. Why is chronic absenteeism important? These are all facts from the New Jersey Department of Education website. A student is chronically absent if they have missed as few as 2 days of school a month. 2 days of school a month, 10 months, that's 20 days they would miss. Evidence indicates that it is how many days a student misses that matters, not why they miss them, when analyzing attendance and educational outcomes. Attending school every day increases chances of success in school and in life. Chronic absenteeism is a primary cause of low academic achievement and a powerful predictor of students who may eventually drop out of school. Chronic absenteeism is not the same as truancy. In New Jersey, truancy is defined as having 10 or more unexcused absences, whereas a student in New Jersey is typically declared chronically absent if they have 18 or more excused and or unexcused absences within a school year. I'll talk more about truancy and unexcused absences. And by the 6th grade, along with GPA, absenteeism is a top predictor of dropout. The need for a chronic absenteeism corrective action plan. So it is in New Jersey state statute that school districts that exceed the threshold for chronic absenteeism are mandated to have corrective action plans to address chronic absenteeism. The statute states, pursuant to code, in the event that 10% or more of the students enrolled in a public school are chronically absent, the school shall develop a corrective action plan to improve absenteeism rates. The corrective action plan shall include, but not be limited to, the following components. And I'll get to those components in a second. So basically, an individual student is chronically absent if he or she misses 10% of the school year. So a student is chronically absent if they miss 18 days of school or more. Then when you're talking about chronic absenteeism on the school level, you take the school population, and of the school population, 10% or more of the students are chronically absent. That's the threshold. So if a school like Alpine, roughly, let's say 750 kids, 10% of that is 75 students. So if you have 75 students or more that are 10% or more individually, it's tough to follow, then that school has a chronic absenteeism issue as well, and they exceed the threshold. So if that is the case, which is the case for all 5 of our schools, then you have to come up with a corrective action plan. The corrective action plan should have the following components. You need to identify the problems and barriers to school attendance, develop recommendations to address the problems and barriers to school attendance that have been identified, outlining communication strategies to educate and inform parents on the importance of school attendance, establishing protocols on informing and engaging parents when a child begins to show a pattern of absences, and review school policies to ensure that they support improved school attendance. So I am going to present, tonight I am presenting more generally on a district level about what our schools are facing and what we are doing to address those. The specific action plans for each school are hyperlinked at the end of this presentation. So if you want to get into the specific statistics and the specific action plans of each building, they are linked at the end of this presentation. I'm going to speak more generally on a district level this evening. Some commonalities amongst those action plans. Here are our statistics. So this is Sparta Township Public Schools chronic absenteeism statistics by school. This is based on the latest performance report. The latest performance report that is out reflects the 22-23 school year. The 23-24 school year that just concluded, that performance report is not out yet. So you can see each of our schools, the chronic absenteeism rate for 22-23, and what the state average was. So Alpine Elementary School, 24% chronic absenteeism rate. That means 24% of the students at Alpine School have missed 10% or more of the school days. The state average, so that's 24% for Alpine, the state average is 19.6% for that year. Mohawk Avenue, 17.8% was their absenteeism rate. The state average is 14%, was 14% for that year. Helen Morgan, similar, 17.4%, 13.3% being the state average. Sparta Middle School, 16.2%, and 14.8% being the state average. And then the high school, 15%, actually being below the state average of 18.1%, but still above the threshold of 10%. What you can see here in that particular year, the 22-23 school year, is the older the students get as far as schools go, the lower the chronic absenteeism is. That's a trend you can see there. Back to 21-22, I'm not going to read all of those rates. You can see what those rates are. You can see them on the screen here. You can see them at home on the presentation. One thing that is important to note is that the New Jersey Department of Education just cautions you as you go back in years, 22-23, but if you go back in years behind 22-23, they just caution people that are looking at those statistics because of COVID and coming out of COVID. And COVID really, I mean, you go further back than that, obviously the 2021, the numbers will be all over the place. So they just caution you. The most accurate as far as the DOE is concerned, the most accurate is the most recent, and then just take the later ones with more of a grain of salt. So components to school corrective action plans. If you were to click on any of our school corrective action plans, you would see these components. That each school has to have a problem-solving team. And we worked together as an admin team in the district to come up with some commonalities for corrective action plans, and then really gave the freedom to the principals to go back to their teams and actually create their own individual ones. The problem-solving team, for the most part, except for in the high school, they already had an attendance team. But in the other schools, we have data teams and school improvement panels. What we wanted to do there was use teams that already exist, RTI teams, RTI committees that are already looking at students, their performance and their statistics and barriers that they're facing. We're just going to morph those teams into also including chronic absenteeism in those buildings. Any decisions that you make need to be data-based. You need to assess, you need to build supports and protocols, you need to implement them, and you also need to include a parent/caregiver survey. We were waiting, although we wanted to get these board approved so they were in effect for the school year, we were waiting for the parent/caregiver survey to make sure we were back in school, and we were hoping to get a better response rate. So coming in September, we will release surveys from all of the school buildings pertaining to parents' perceptions when it comes to absenteeism. And each plan has to have a plan for sustainability. Standardize and embed practices, ongoing research and professional development, and then of course reviewing and revising. One of the key components to corrective action plans, what the New Jersey Department of Education wants you to do is they want you to revisit current policies. So what we've been working on as an administrative team, along with the Board of Education, is we've been working on revising our regulation 5200. And we've worked for a couple of months now and came up with certain revisions, which I'll get into. Key revisions to the regulation, the attendance regulation. New Jersey Department of Education recognizes two types of absences. They are either state excused or state unexcused. And I will show you what those actual absences are. But when the state is calculating absenteeism rates in any school for any student, they really don't care why a student is out unless they fall under the state excused category. And I'll show you what those reasons are in a moment. You are allowed to, as a school district, and we do, come up with locally excused absence reasons, but, and that's just for us and for our own use. But when it comes to, again, when it comes to the Department of Education looking at your absenteeism rates, they really only care if students miss school. If you miss school for state excused, they will take that off. One of the state excused reasons would be bring your child to work day. So that's a state excused allotted absence, and if a student misses that day and is excused for that day, that's one day, they then take their equation out of 179 days instead of 180. And again, I'll get into what those reasons are. Absences outside the listed excused are counted toward truancy. We'll talk about truancy in a moment. And that really will come down to principal discretion when it comes to truancy. Here are the updated reasons in accordance with our updated regulation. These, you can see down the left-hand column what the state statute says are excused absences. Those are state excused absences. And these are the only ones that will not affect chronic absenteeism. Religious observances, observance of Veterans Day, participation in district board of election activities, take our children to work day, college visits for grades 11 and 12, up to 3 days per school year. Closure of school buildings, obviously, if we have a snow day, that they're not expected to be in school that day. And the most recently added, in fact, it's a brand new revision for this evening because it just came out, was attendance at a civic event, and in the revised regulation this evening that's on the agenda, you can see how they define a civic event. But that's only allowed for 1 day a year. In addition to those reasons, those are the state excused, and they don't go against chronic absenteeism. We do have locally excused reasons that you can see there on the right-hand column. So the locally excused reasons, which again will not affect our statistics, are all of the state excused reasons plus a student's required attendance in court, IDEA accommodations, suspension from school, death in the family, interviews with prospective employers or admissions officers, a driver's license examination, and necessary and unavoidable medical dental appointments. When you're looking at the corrective action plan, some common themes that you will see. We treated it more like the RTI, the MTSS process, and breaking it down into tiers and how we address students and families that have chronic absenteeism issues. Tier 1 strategies that you have been seeing as parents, we're going to continue to do for all students when they hit these thresholds. Genesis will continue to provide parental notification when they hit 4 days, 7 days, 9 days, and 10 days of absence. Parents will receive a letter through Genesis. Promoting and encouraging student attendance at morning meetings, at assemblies, on school events, through school announcements, and the integration of importance of attendance into teacher lessons. Those are what all students will receive. Tier 2 and Tier 3 will be more focused when students start to have more absences. Teacher or staff check-ins for students at risk for chronic absenteeism, formal parent meetings, individualized goals, and a possible truancy filing. Those are going to be fewer and far between based on individual circumstances, the truancy filings. So just some other key notes and a summary of what I had already discussed, that chronic absenteeism is an issue locally, statewide, and nationwide. I attended my own son's orientation today for junior high, and it was one of their presentations today, was talking about chronic absenteeism. So it's not just a Sparta issue. It's not just a New Jersey issue. It's a nationwide issue, chronic absenteeism. Each Sparta school has measures in place to track student absences, communicate with parents, and support students who are approaching and or exceed the chronic absenteeism threshold. Please continue, we will stress this, please continue to keep your students home when they are sick. We are trying to encourage better school attendance, but at the same time, when students are sick, we will ask you to please keep those students home. You are allowed, as I demonstrated, you are allowed 17 absences. And if you think about 17 absences in a school year, that's a lot of absences. So on the occasion that a student is sick and cannot come to school, please keep them home. You're not going to hit the 18 just off of that, more than likely. Our goal is to work with parents and students to ensure students attend school regularly, which will lead to the success in school. And we acknowledge that there are circumstances that require students to miss school. Absences accumulated for valid reasons will not lead to truancy filings. And then here are the links. Again, you can get access these on the website. The updated regulation that's on the agenda this evening for second reading is hyperlinked there. It's the clean version, not the red line version. It's much more easy to read to see what our new regulation is. And then you can see the links to each individual school's corrective action plans. All schools we all worked together as a big committee, but the elementary schools are very similar, if not identical. They worked very closely together. Middle school has its own needs, and of course high school had its own needs, so they kind of deviate from the others when because of their student population. And that's the presentation.
Wow. Thank you.
Yep.
Before moving on, anyone from the board have any questions? No? Perfect. Can I get a motion for the approval of the minutes?
Motion.
Thank you. Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Now we're going to go right back to Dr. Beck, his superintendent's report.
While I'm warm, right?
Hopefully it's short.
All right, thank you. First, I would like to begin by acknowledging and thanking all of our 12-month staff for all their hard work over the summer. There's a lot of work that needs to be done over the summer between closing out the previous school year and quickly transitioning to preparing to open the new school year. Each summer, our building secretaries, custodians, buildings and grounds and maintenance crews, IT personnel, administrators, transportation department, and business office staff do all that is necessary and quite often goes unseen and unrecognized. Thank you again to everyone as we prepare to open another successful school year. And that is always how I open my welcome back speech to the staff as well, which staff returns already Wednesday, if you were not aware. I would like to recognize the following staff members who appear on this evening's agenda with their announced retirements. Catherine Mastriani, a school bus aide for the district, has served the district for 8.5 years. Karen Rennie, who is most recently a 6th through 8th grade instructional intervention teacher, has served the district for 17 years. And Mike Willie, who is a social studies teacher, has served the district for 27 years. So best wishes to those retirees. An update on the referendum progress. The referendum process continues to move along as we have met with the Bond Council to determine what the financial impact to taxpayers would be under certain cost scenarios. We have also held multiple meetings with our architect, along with administration and buildings and grounds, to discuss the most ideal design for a potential addition to Alpine Elementary School, as well as necessary upgrades to our other buildings. We are still discussing the timing and role of public input, but that will be decided very soon. We are getting close to the time where we will land on a final design and begin to move forward with the formal process from there. An ESIP update. ESIP is the Energy Savings Improvement Program. Both Sparta Middle School and Sparta High School recently had solar panels installed on their roofs, and those panels are now fully operational. These solar panels were installed as part of the ESIP program that our district committed to a few years ago. The program will bring energy savings to our district and has already funded many energy savings capital projects throughout our schools. Recently, a board committee, Ms. Rossi and I, met to discuss district goals, board goals, and updating the strategic plan goals and action plan. It is our plan to re-engage our building-based committees to update each building's strategic plan, action plan, soon after the teachers and staff return. We will also continue to update and align our district goals to the strategic plan, and the board will be creating Board of Education goals as well. The plan is to present all of these updates at the September board meeting. In the beginning of August, Sparta High School hosted the New Jersey Department of Education and Office of Emergency Preparedness as they offered school safety specialist training and certification to law enforcement, administrators, and security personnel from across the state. I'm proud to say that Sparta Township Public Schools had a combined 13 administrators and security officers that attended the training and earned their certification. This training and certification is just one more measure we have taken to continue to make our schools safer for our students, staff, and school community. Last month, I shared updates pertaining to the revised attendance regulation, cell phone policy, website, and other matters. With the anticipated board approval this evening of the second reading of the aforementioned policy and regulation, I will be drafting and sending a community letter containing these updates and various other updates as we prepare to open our schools. Parents can be on the lookout for that letter early next week. And lastly, I would like to wish all of our students, staff, and families a safe and happy return to the school as we enter the 24-25 school year. And I will turn it over to Ms. Rossi. All good. Okay.
Good? Thank you.
She's amazing.
All right, thank you. For the President's report, I just want to remind people with the schools opening soon, there'll be lots of questions, concerns, and complaints, I'm sure. Just a reminder, we as a board do not field complaints. We don't take complaints. So if you have a complaint about a certain building, something that's happening in that building, go to that building's administrator. If he can't get you the answer, he'll find it and take it that way. Go through the chain of command. Don't come to us. Go to your building administrator. Secondly, if you guys haven't noticed, the bridge on Main Street is closed, so just use that as caution. I don't want you to be late to school, and it's not opening anytime soon, so that's all I got. Okay. Get a motion to move the HIB report. Okay, second.
Second.
Thank you. Joanne?
Ms. Collier,
Yes.
Ms. Gagnon,
Yes.
Ms. Seelander,
Yes.
Ms. Serafino,
Yes.
Dr. Serrano,
Yes.
Mr. Wood,
Yes.
Mr. Morris.
Yes. Communications, Joanne? No? Okay. Delegate liaison reports. I forget if I mentioned this last meeting with shared services. We just did a project with the town. Where was that? What school was that done?
Which one?
It's hard to hear you.
Paving?
Is that better? There you go. Yeah, the high school, right?
High school, middle school, the oil tank removal projects. Once the oil tanks are removed, they need to be repaved over, and the town did a great job working with us and saving the taxpayers a lot of money by doing the repaving.
So we thank the town for, again, working with us, cost savings with that, so thank you. Anyone else?
I'll touch on two things. Just as Dr. Beck said, just for you, Jenny Derricks, as for the strategic planning committee meeting, everything's going super, super well. We had our field service rep, Kelly Mitchell, come out, and she actually recommended us, since we're going through our district goals, board goals, mission statement, she thinks that we should present it all at once, just as a full-fledged thing. So that's why we're going to push it back to September. No need to rush anything. And just to talk about our district website, everything's going really, really well. I'm not sure if it's full-fledged and up yet, but I'm really pleased with it, and I think that there's a little work to be done, but overall it's excellent. And to also let us know your feedback about the website, because that is all very interchangeable, and we have a lot more access to flex with the website. So keep that in mind.
And just on that note, the last component of the whole changeover to ThrillShare will be the district app, and that will be the last thing to come off the ground. But that's coming soon.
Nothing? SEF? Nothing? Turkey trot? Okay. No one else? Good. I know it's a ways away, but I recently had a meeting with SEF and the Turkey Trot Committee through work, but that's right around the corner. It'll be here before you know it, so look out for that to sign up. And I have nothing else. Okay. Public comment number 1. Public comments are invited on all matters pertaining only to action items at this time. Please state the action item number as well as your name, municipality, and group affiliation, if appropriate, for the record. Each participant will be given 3 minutes to speak. Once you have your allotted 3 minutes to speak, you will not be permitted to speak again until public comment number 2. All statements should be directed to me as presiding officer. The board or administration may or may not respond to any questions or comments after the conclusion of public participation.
Getting older, need to use the iPad versus the phone. Good evening, Mr. President, Sparta Board of Ed, Dr. Beck, Cliff Sarnek, 6 Cottonwood Trail, Sparta, candidate for the Sparta Board of Education with the Make Schools Great team. Speaking in reference to 15.42. Following last month's meeting, several parents reached out to us, and we read considerable concern online regarding the attendance policy. Specifically, the unexcused policy would essentially require doctor's notes for a single day's absence. A lot of parents were concerned over the increase in copay, as well as missed work for doctor's appointments for a tummy ache or the mental health day. We also spoke to a few local pediatricians who expressed some concern about the potential increase in appointment requests for students with the phantom sore throat on a test day and children with a legitimate need to be seen that would not be seen. We reached out to a few of you. We asked the requirement be made after 3 days. We're hearing that is going to happen, and the Make Schools Great team is proud we could already help advocate for some parents and make lives easier. One other concern that doesn't need to be addressed tonight, but perhaps a later amendment, you eliminated family illness, and perhaps you can consider as a locally excused absence a provision for serious or life-threatening illness, family illness. Students who have a parent or grandparent facing a life-threatening surgery or end-of-life moment shouldn't be asked to consider between school and family. Our guess is their attention would not be on school anyway. Also, regarding the cell phone use policy, my reading of the policy is the policy isn't really changing. Yet we had a study done by professionals that said students would benefit with less screen time. Over the years, a big deal has been made about listening to professionals, and it seems like you're not doing that here. Now, I agree, experts and professionals can get it wrong. We saw some great examples during COVID. It is okay to respectfully disagree with experts, but in this case, I think they got it right. We've talked to a few of our teachers and believe them when they are telling us that they are battling distractions, and it takes away from the learning process. Professionally and through my volunteering as a member of the Sparta Ambulance Squad, I've seen firsthand the increase in mental health issues among our young people caused by online bullying and lack of social interaction caused by excessive screen time. Time away from phones and electronics would be a good thing during the school day. Not asking that phones be taken away. As a parent, I want my children to have their phone in the event of an emergency. Some of the discussions we've had with parents would like to see our kids talking at lunch. We've heard from a few students that would like to maybe play basketball at the high school during lunch instead. At very least, split the lunch period time in half to eat, half with the phone. Having students' phone separated during class is also a great idea. Last year, we saw a few teachers with slots or something at the front of the classroom. That's a great idea. The only input that we heard from students and parents is that perhaps consider moving those slots to the rear of the classroom. So in the event of an emergency, God forbid the unthinkable, students can get their phones through the back of the room versus walking up near the front door, which would be potentially hazardous. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, if there's nobody else, motion to close.
Motion.
Thank you. Second. All in favor? Okay.
I'll just comment.
Yeah.
I'll just comment on that last part about the location. Yeah, we talked about that multiple times with the administrative team. We talked about it with SEA leadership as well about how we would store those phones and what the expectation would be. But yeah, those phones would be in emergency locations, in safe locations within the classroom. In case students were in a lockdown situation or emergency situation, they would not be going toward the door to get those cell phones.
Dr. Beck, to that question, could you just clarify on the doctor's note perspective? Was that a building-based, like the 3 days? I know we talked about that in committee with the 3 days for doctor's note.
Yeah, so in the locally excused, it would be a locally excused absence if you had an unavoidable appointment. I believe it says doctor's and or dentist appointment, unavoidable, with proof of appointment. So that would allow, again, it's locally unexcused. And no matter if it's locally excused, whether it's locally excused, state excused, whatever it may be, just think of it as an 18-day pot. So regardless of why you're missing school, whatever that reason may be, if it is a family illness, students are allowed to miss school. Students are allowed to miss 17 days of school, which is a lot. And so I understand. I mean, we've spent a lot of time as a committee and as an administration talking about the reasons that we would allow this and what would encourage or lead to better attendance in our schools. And those are the reasons that we found. If there's a reason that's not on that list that a student misses school, they're allowed to miss school 17 times. So when it comes to the doctor's note on an unavoidable would allow for an unexcused, would allow for a locally excused absence. But again, whether it's locally excused, state excused, unexcused, whatever, your pot is 18, right? And then the latest revision based on what Strauss Esme just sent over to us, if a student is absent for 3 or more days, we will compel a doctor's note for those reasons. And that's district-wide, that's not by building.
And Dr. Beck, if I may just add to that too, I think it's important that everyone does check the most updated version of the regulation, because I understand there was some chatter on social media and perhaps some misinformation as to what the new regulation actually says. But the newest version of the regulation does say that a locally excused absence does include illness in accordance with nurse recommendation guidelines, building guidelines. Everyone has the health information available by building right on the website. Those are obviously ever changing, as COVID proved. So we are obviously being very mindful of that. But the goal overall, and to Dr. Beck's point, and Lauren was in that policy meeting where we discussed this at length, the goal is to help the community understand the state excused and unexcused are completely outside of our jurisdiction. However, the local excused, which is something that not all districts even choose to pursue. Some districts just decide we're going by the state and that's that, and that's what you get. We're giving that grace to make sure that people have the opportunity, obviously the leeway to understand that life happens. But I do think it's very important that we're looking at the most updated version of the regulation, because I do think that that's going to help quell some of the concerns. That said, I want to also take the time, and maybe it's more appropriate for the good of the order, I would like to actually commend our committee, because that was probably, 2 hours, and Ms. Rossi for staying over and being late for a meeting that followed, probably the most collaborative committee meeting that I've sat in on yet. And I'm super, super proud of the work that we accomplished in that committee, not just for the attendance regulation, but also for policy 5516. I understand that there are always going to be people who are not totally satisfied with the cell phone policy. But I would say we worked extremely closely with our teams, admin teams, building teams, to not only, and beyond that, teams in other districts that have already gone through these processes. So all of the decisions that have been made and all of the reflections you see in both the attendance regulation and the cell phone policy are rooted in data. It's not impulsive, it's not reactive, it's not trying to, not to say the word, but ban use of certain things to the vitriol of others. So the idea is everything that I can say the policy as it stands for the cell phones specifically, I'm very confident that this is going to give us the most opportunity to have a successful rollout of a plan, while also addressing the ongoing culture that I think everyone is in agreement about. So I would just, again, encourage everyone to make sure you're looking at the most updated version of the attendance regulation, and also the most updated version of the cell phone use policy, where K-8, it is essentially not qualified in any way for use. So through the middle school, we do not encourage cell phone use at all, and there's very specific delineation in that policy. At the high school level, it's generally discouraged, and there's very specific parameters that are laid out in that policy for the buildings to operate, and that it'll go further into the student handbooks where it belongs.
Thank you. Okay, moving on. Can I get a motion to move personnel policy 15.1 to 15.48 with these additions?
Yeah, I just have a few minor revisions, thank you. 15.18, the SHS overload stipends. Ms. Deerdorf is on there twice for a double overload. That is actually only going to be one overload, not two. And then two late additions, Melanie Kithcart and Courtney Highland, both life skills teachers, will receive one overage for the number of classes, and that's a full overage with that $13,000 number. And then 15.36, the SMS co-curricular advisor, just a minor revision there. Jeff Trzynski is an SHS advisor, not an SMS advisor, and falls under the SMS. So that would reflect, or should reflect, SHS for Mr. Trzynski.
Okay, can I get a motion? Thank you, Caitlin. Second. Thank you. Discussion?
Ms. McMichael couldn't be here tonight, but she did ask that I read a statement in regards to policy 5516, the use of electronic communication recording devices. She states, although unable to vote, I would like to officially go on record to state that I do not support this policy as it stands today for the following reasons. In June, we all heard the why behind our district revising the policy to address impacts on learning and, most importantly, student mental health and the growing crisis seen nationwide with today's youth. New Jersey School Board's model cell phone policy supports eliminating cell phone use during the entire instructional day, which is defined to include lunch, recess, hallways, etc. This is the language I unsuccessfully urged to my fellow committee members to include for second reading tonight. To echo Ms. DeLucia's plea from the last meeting, I will quote the book that she urged us all to read, The Anxious Generation. It says, most schools say they ban phones, but that typically means that only the students must not use their cell phones during class. This is an ineffective policy because it incentivizes students to hide their phone use during class and increase their phone use after class, which makes it harder for them to form friendships with the kids around them. A better policy is to go phone-free for the entire school day, end quote. To further support this concept, in our district presentation from June's board meeting, Dr. Esposito presented with research from Columbia Psychiatry that highlighted the harmful effects of the dose-response relationship on mental health. This research supports a cell phone-free learning environment. Allowing free use of cell phones in the high school outside of class time does nothing to address these concerns and therefore does very little, if anything, to protect student mental health during the instructional day. I encourage us as a board to revisit the policy in the near future. I just want to, and that was her statement, I do want to add, I wholeheartedly support the work done on this area as a whole. I agree with Caitlin that it was a highly collaborative session. I think we've really are going in the right direction with revised language and what went into the second read. It goes further to discourage cell phone use for students while bringing the policy into the current times. I am concerned and agree with some of Ms. McMichael's sentiments that we maybe aren't going far enough to address the mental health issues at hand. And I would just offer that I think creating those healthy boundaries and teaching digital citizenship and anything that we can do to avoid this habit, the addictive habit of this dose-response relationship, is vitally important to cultivating a setting in our buildings that supports the levels of highest student achievement, a safe learning environment, and prioritizes our commitment to the whole child by supporting best practices for their mental health and adding them and helping them to engage in undistracted discourse and building relationships with one another. For me, those are the skills that our students really need at the end of the day to be successful in any of their future endeavors. And I'm torn on this because I had reached out to Dr. Beck and said I may be a no vote on this tonight for that very reason. I'm moving to a yes, but, because I would like to, I would like to engage further discussion of the colleagues at the board, and I would like to see if the board would be open to bringing this back into committee in January, after we could take some time to look at it in practice in the buildings, to see, to Caitlin's point, we're saying in this policy there still is not an educational, we have not seen any educational benefit or mental health benefit to having it in the K-8 setting, but in the high school, looking to see, is what we are doing enough? I'm afraid by voting no that I'm not showing confidence in the process, because I do appreciate the collaborative effort of this. I just need it to be known that I do agree with Mrs. Michael's sentiments that we might not be going far enough in accordance to the research. And I really think it's important that our building teams get a chance to look at that, and I would love to see the data presented back to us so we could maybe further refine this policy. And I'm open to discussion of everyone else, obviously. Thank you.
I would just speak to the latter half of that when you were speaking about monitoring the implementation. 100%. That's going to be, I guarantee, it's going to be a topic at each and every one of our admin meetings. How is it going? And focusing on the high school with how is it going, and the middle school too, to an extent, because it's new there. What's going to be happening there with no cell phones. So yes, that's going to be an ongoing process of reviewing how it's going with administrators and with the teaching staff, and getting feedback from the teachers as well as to how that's going in their classrooms. That it is working, it's not working for these reasons. What if we did X, Y, and Z just to tweak it a little bit? So we are going. So yeah, absolutely. It could be a topic on every committee every month from now until whenever, because we're going to be doing it locally. So if you want report outs, I can do it in my weekly update or whatever it may be. But we're going to be monitoring that very closely.
I think
do
with regards to looking at it again in January, I think it's too soon. Let it get in place. Like I said last meeting, yeah, we will be here next year making revisions to this policy, but having it done in January after all the work we've done through the summer is just too soon to really know how it's going to pan out. I think once we get a full school year under our belt and the continued partnership we have with the teachers now, I think we'll have a more understanding of where we're going come next June. So the way it is now, and in regards to the instructional time, I think it covers the instructional time. I don't look at lunch as an instructional period. And to monitor phone use during lunch, you have 1,100, 1,000 kids in one area for, they're not all on their phones at that time. Some have to eat real fast, go to lab, so they're not having phones there because that's instructional time. So, letting the kids use their phone during lunch, I really do not think it's going to hurt them in any way, and it's not going to hurt the school. And keeping it out of the classroom, I think, is the main focus, and having the teachers, the administration, upholding their end of the deal to enforce the policy as written. So
I would just like to chime in on that too. I couldn't agree more, and I think that in light of and in spirit of the amount of time that we've dedicated to this, and the teams that have assembled to dedicate time to this, and the building level, the administrative level, I think it's really important that we remember, our job is to absolutely support the whole student and the wellness of the student, but it is not our job to police this district. And I would also say, beyond that, I'm slightly disappointed by the statement, but obviously that's certainly within Ms. McMichael's right. We discussed everyone's concerns at length. And Lauren, I also agree with Dr. Beck, and I agree with you. Is there an opportunity? I do believe we're going to continue to be having this discussion probably for months, just even on a board level. I can't see why we wouldn't. It's not being etched into stone, the policy, but it is our starting point. I agree with Kurt. We need to give this a proper school year to see how it goes. If we run into some serious areas of concern, we're not beholden to that year. We obviously can make revisions as needed. We've talked about regulation. We've talked about student handbooks. I think this is the starting point. And while we would all love to envision a world in which there are no phones or temptations for our children, our job is not to protect our children from the world. It's to prepare them for it. And I think at the high school level, the reality is cell phones exist. Parents we heard tonight, parents want their kids to have phones on them during emergency situations, even if that's not what data shows. Totally within parents' rights to have those concerns. But ultimately, our job is to make sure that we're fostering the best education possible for our students. And to some of the concerns that were brought up by Ms. McMichael, again, reiterating, it's not our job to police conversations or whether or not someone has been on their phone for however long during the lunch period compared to what the time is allotted. I would rather set our district, our students, and our staff up for success to be relieved by this policy and take part in the general, being generally discouraged from using phones, rather than policing and kind of implementing these punishments in the event that you're instantly violating policy. So I support this policy as we revised it. I'm proud of this policy, and I absolutely will be voting to support it tonight.
Thank you.
And just,
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Chad.
just a little follow-up to Caitlin with some student perspective. No, you had me think, Lauren, when you say you're afraid of not going too far. But I think in some circumstances like these, I would lean on the edge of maybe doing a little less, especially in terms of phones. I feel like for a high school student, when you transition from a pretty lackluster phone policy to, if per se there were no phones in school, that would be an extreme shock to students. I think already transitioning towards the phone sockets or the bins is a great idea. And recently being in classes where you have some classes where it's full phone access and some teachers don't care, and then other ones where it could be the teacher's very strict and you need to have it in the bin at all times. I think a lot of problems kind of fix themselves. So for instance, with students, say, hiding their phones when they come into class, teachers will oftentimes assign numbers to desks so you can easily identify who is keeping their phone and who isn't. So there's some easy ways to weed out students trying to hide their phones. But I think, like Dr. Beck said, or Kurt said, giving the time for the free periods where students could have a chance to use their phone, I think is always healthy to a degree. But also, what oftentimes I ask teachers, with certain, like post-COVID, as a student, it was very different because some students did not care at all about learning anymore, while some still cared a lot. And I would ask some teachers what they would do if some students just simply don't really care that much and would prefer to spend all that time on their phone instead of listening. And they said that they're at a point where it's hard to kind of bring that student back in. And I think a good solution to this could be an instance like a phone cart, or a place to put your phone, in lieu of, say, eliminating all phones, because then it's less of the teacher's job to really motivate the student, and you kind of take away their incentive to do something else, and it's kind of, you're in front of the teacher and you can choose to listen or choose to not, and when you leave that room you can go back on your phone. But I think focusing on in the classroom is the most important aspect of it.
I think your concerns and Ms. Michael's concerns are very, very valid. And just one thing I want to add to everyone's points that we're making is I think this is a very complex issue, and addressing phones is more than just can they have them or not have them. A big part of addressing the mental health issues that come with using a phone, I think, is going to be education. And I've worked with Dr. Beck and Ms. Rossi and sent over curriculums that I've seen about addressing like social media with students, and really just how can they have a phone but learn how to properly use it. So I totally think this is going to be a big part of the board's future in a lot of ways outside of just this policy, as we develop curriculum and everything as well.
That's a very good point. Thank you. And I appreciate the discussion. I appreciate the willingness just to continue the discussion, to monitor, and I appreciate your willingness to continue sharing data with us as it goes forward. I think it's important that we just are aware, and I think we can utilize these Grade Align teams, things like that, to see, are we indeed making a difference? So thank you.
Okay, if there's nobody else, Joanne, can we get a...
Ms. Collier,
Yes.
Ms. Gagnon,
Yes.
Ms. Sealander,
Yes.
Ms. Serafino,
Yes.
Dr. Serrano,
Yes.
Mr. Wood,
Yes.
Mr. Morris.
Yes. Okay, moving on to curriculum, motion for 16.1 to 16.13.
Motion?
Thank you, Chad. Second, thank you. Discussion? Joanne?
Ms. Collier,
Yes.
Ms. Gagnon,
Yes.
Ms. Sealander,
Yes.
Ms. Serafino,
Yes.
Dr. Serrano,
Yes.
Mr. Wood,
Yes.
Mr. Morris.
Yes. Motion for finance 17.1 to 17.12.
Motion. Oh,
Thank
second.
you. Second, discussion.
I just want to draw attention and thank to 1710 and thanking for the generous donation from the Marching Band Booster Club for the trailer at the amount of $12,120. That'll be a great addition to the marching band program. It's something we've been all talking about and working through. And thank you to the public for continuing to support these fundraisers, and also to the Alpine PTO for their Scholastic subscription for the 2nd grade, and Cutting Edge Landscaping for their $4,600 worth of landscaping for Mohawk Avenue School. Thank you.
Thank you, Lauren. Joanne?
Ms. Collier,
Yes.
Ms. Gagnon,
Yes.
Ms. Sealander,
Yes.
Ms. Serafino,
Yes.
Dr. Serrano,
Yes.
Mr. Wood,
Yes.
Mr. Morris.
Yes. Motion for operations 18-1 to 18-4.
Motion.
Thank you. Second? Thank you. Discussion. Joanne?
Ms. Collier,
Yes.
Ms. Gagnon,
Yes.
Ms. Sealander,
Yes.
Ms. Serafino,
Yes.
Dr. Serrano,
Yes.
Mr. Wood,
Yes.
Mr. Morris.
Yes. Okay, thank you. Anyone have anything for old business? New business? Lovely. Moving on to public comment number 2. The board uses this second public comment period to invite comments on all matters pertaining to the school district. Please state your name, municipality, and group affiliation if appropriate. For the record, each participant will receive 3 minutes to speak. Once you're allotted 3 minutes to speak, you will not be permitted to speak again. All statements should be directed to me as presiding officer. The board or the administration may or may not respond to any questions or comments at the conclusion of public participation.
Don't worry, I already signed. It's okay.
Okay.
Good evening. My name is Angela DeLucia, and I am the very proud president of the Sparta Education Association and Sussex County Education Association. Summer is winding down, back to school mode is kicking into high gear, and the members of SEA are ready for the 24-25 school year. Even in the summer, our members are accomplishing amazing things. Emily Scott from SHS organized an adventure-filled, hands-on learning trip for our students to Costa Rica. With the assistance of Craig Merrill, the teachers and students were able to embrace a new culture, explore volcanoes, and experience Pura Vida. Dr. Viviana Morales Burgess, kindergarten teacher at Alpine, has been selected to be a part of the RAPID project through William Patterson University, partnered with the NJ Department of Education, the Reading Acceleration Professional Integrated Development Project, RAPID, targets literacy in preschool and early elementary grades. The fall athletics season has begun. Our coaches, trainers, secretary, and of course our athletes are working tirelessly to make sure that this season is successful. And anytime you are near SHS lately, you have surely heard or seen our marching band perfecting their performance. I truly believe this is their era. If anyone is moving forward together, if everyone is moving forward together, then success takes care of itself. We know that you can't achieve everything on your own. You need a team working together for a common goal, and Sparta truly has an all-star team. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank Dr. Beck and Mrs. Rossi for their amenability to meet each month to discuss pertinent issues prior to each board meeting, and Mr. Morris, Ms. Gagnon, and Ms. Collier for participating in the Ideas Committee that opens lines of communications between the board and our members. In just a few short days, we will be welcoming back new and veteran staff, and soon after, our students. The SEA looks forward to another successful start to the school year, fostering partnerships amongst the community, and the continued collegial support of the board. We are turning the page to a new chapter. The pages are still blank. Let's make this an outstanding story.
Thank you.
Hi, Jenny Derricks, Tap into Sparta. I just had a couple of questions about the two policies, the absentee policy and the cell phone policy. I don't know if this is even on. It's been a while since I had a student in school. So what is the difference to the student if they have a state versus a local excused absence? Does it look any different to them as long as they're under that 18 threshold? What is the student's responsibility for that? Do the schools still call home if the student isn't there and the parent hasn't called? In other words, is the expectation still that the parent or the guardian is going to contact the school and let them know that their student isn't going to be in? Do we have an idea of how many districts in the state have to undergo a CAP process for their absenteeism? And then finally, regarding the cell phone policy, is there going to be any type of an educational program at the middle school to help the students, I think Chad might have mentioned, to go from not using your phone at all, and then now you're going to have a little bit of access to your phone. Is there going to be any type of a support or educational process for the middle school students to understand the importance of restraint? Thank you.
Thank you.
Do I need to do a second time?
You do. You can do it after if
I'll
you
do it
want.
after.
Just
Save you
talk
time.
first.
Once again, Cliff Cernak, 6 Cottonwood Trail, Sparta. As part of discussions we've been having with some students and getting their input at the beginning of our campaign, one of the biggest concerns we're hearing is the issue of vaping in school, especially in and around the bathrooms and when teachers are stepping out of the classroom. For my generation, it was smoking in the bathroom. I guess this one is vaping. Vaping is already banned in schools, and we'd like to ask Dr. Beck what steps, if any, are being or could be taken by his staff to increase enforcement efforts and perhaps increase disciplinary penalties for those violating the vaping rules.
Is there anybody else? Motion to close public comment. Second. All in favor? Okay.
Okay. I will address Ms. Derrick's questions. The difference to the students, and parents, actually, I would extend that question to, was the difference for the students and the parents between excused and unexcused. There, again, 18 is the number. So there really is no difference between why you are missing school unless it is the state excused. But what we're trying to do and what we're going to do as a Tier 1 effort is we're trying to drill home the importance of attendance in school to students. The actual circumstance that takes place, I'm not in people's homes every morning, but if students are excessively missing school, I'm sure there's conversations between students and parents every morning as well. So the onus of being on the students, yes, there should be some intrinsic motivation there, but really almost the entire responsibility relies on the parents. Of course, if there's reasons to miss school, like the reasons we stated, that happens. But we are hoping that students and parents understand the importance of attending school and that there's collaboration at home when that decision is made. Do parents get notified? Yes, parents get notified. Parents are obligated to notify the school if and when their student is going to be absent. And if that does not take place by a certain time, that parent is notified to say, hey, are you aware? Just making sure your student is not at school today and is everything okay? How many in the state? I don't know how many are in the state. I can tell you that almost every school district in Sussex County is undergoing this process with the corrective action plans. And if you look at the statistics, if you look at the state average on those grade levels, the statistics, every one of those state averages is above 10%. So again, I can't give you an actual number, but it's rampant. I can say that. And then the educational program regarding cell phones, I think Ms. Rossi can field that one.
Yeah, sure. I'm happy to take that one. So we are very fortunate. We're partnering with the Township, specifically the Sparta Municipal Alliance. We're going to be sharing more information about that. But we're undergoing an initiative called Screenagers, which is something that, again, we'll share out as we get closer to times and places and how you can access that. We're actually starting, hopefully, at Helen Morgan School, which is about 4th and 5th grade when kids are starting to have more access to cell phones and screens in general, not necessarily in the school. It's not really been a problem at that level, although it's not going to be something that's available or acceptable or something that they can use at that point. But they are starting to have access to these devices, and there are starting to be incidents or situations where more awareness and education will be important for them. As we get into the middle school, that will continue, and there's more developmentally appropriate programming and workshops for not only students but also for parents, because our parent partnership is very important, and what that looks like and how we support one another in this initiative. And I think the last thing just to add to that is while we do that work together to kind of prepare them for these different developmental periods, like first having access to a phone maybe and not really knowing all of the different things that they might experience, and then having a phone but having a lot of restriction on it, especially when you're in the school building, moving in towards a high school experience where you are young adults and a cell phone is a tool. It's not in and of itself a bad mechanism. It's a piece of technology, and now they have to start to learn how and when and where this technology can be available to them in a useful way or in a disruptive way as they prepare themselves for the real world, where they are going to have full access with much less, direction and boundaries included. So there is programming and there is guidance and there's partnerships with the town throughout that whole process, so that at every level of development, not only will we be able to grow their awareness and understanding, but also help them, teach them how to use these things and teach them the boundaries and appropriate timeframes for when that might be.
And I just
So
have
more
one-
information to come.
I just have one quick comment about that too. Were you done, Tara? Yes. Just one quick comment on that too is the policy. I mean, you can correct me if I'm wrong, Dr. Beck, but from my understanding, I don't think it's going to be a huge difference for the middle school population. From my understanding, cell phones are pretty limited in the middle school already as it is, so it's not going to be this drastic. You have it, now you don't. It's pretty locked down at the middle school already, so I don't think it's going to be a drastic change as far as to what those students are used to, but I do think all of the educational background and teaching these students is important, but as far as the shock to the system, as far as not having phones, I don't think it's going to be very drastic for the middle school population. Middle school to high school is probably going to be the biggest change, but as far as current middle schoolers, I don't think it's going to be a drastic change.
And then just to address Mr. Cernak's comments, last question. Very valid concern, very time appropriate. As we just discussed this matter today, actually we had Mr. Zittimer come in. He trained/retrained the administrative team in many matters regarding student discipline, staff discipline, that sort of thing. But one of the topics that came up was vaping in school, particularly the high school. The measures that are currently in place, there are vape detectors in the bathroom. So if a student is in the bathroom and is vaping, it sets off a detector, a silent alarm, which the administration is alerted to, and hopefully can and security, and hopefully can get there in time to address that matter. When a student is caught vaping or caught with a vape, this is outlined in the student handbook, and we discussed it again today. We discussed it on a legal level. Our policy, our protocol is that when a student is caught vaping in a school, they are automatically sent out for a drug test because we cannot tell what's in that vape. While very well may be something that is legal, it very well may be something that is illegal. And we as administrators don't have the equipment, the time, or the resources to judge that. So it's an automatic. If a student is caught vaping, they're automatically sent out for a drug test, which is very inconvenient for the student, very inconvenient for the parent, and hopefully would deter such behavior in the future. And this is, again, it's not just a Sparta issue. It's definitely a countywide issue, statewide issue, nationwide issue. But there's actually a task force that the Superintendent Roundtable has put together to work with the prosecutor's office because what we are trying to do when we're talking about consequences is a lot of times or sometimes we'll refer such matters to the prosecutor's office in hopes of them instituting a fine when it comes to this. And it doesn't happen very often. So superintendents, police chiefs, and the prosecutor's office have been working together a lot more recently to try to curb this behavior and try to figure out ways to properly enforce the vaping in school to discourage it. Yes.
My kid and the kids who talk to said they can't go to the bathroom. That may be home. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Anybody else?
I just want to touch on, as far as the locally excused absences, it's more in terms of like the impact on the student, to Mrs. Derrick's question, is that it expands upon, obviously it's expanding upon the state definition. We're still talking about the same days, but what we talked about and we made careful consideration of in committee for the second read was ensuring, particularly at the high school level, when you consider even half your courses, loss of credit. So we did want to take into careful consideration that while the attendance is critically important, we wanted to delineate reasons that would be, the state excluded plus, so that we're avoiding students missing or losing credit for courses that they are taking.
Yeah, to that end, when I answered your question, I was answering it more broadly, K to 12. But when you're talking about high school specifically, the onus is on the student, and the students are made well aware. It doesn't just affect, an elementary student. If they miss 20 days of school, all right, I exceeded the threshold, whatever, what's going to happen, basically. But when you're in the high school, to Lauren's point, and to answer it just on the high school level, there's seat time requirements. And if students do not meet those seat time requirements, they will not get credit for that course. And they will be obligated to make up time for that course, which again is going to be super inconvenient for those students coming in on a Saturday to make up time or whatever it may be. So again, when the older you get, the less you see as far as chronic absenteeism goes, as far as the percentages go. But it's still a problem. And in the high school, students are made well aware. So talking about responsibility, kindergarten student has a different responsibility for his or herself than does a high school student.
And as a parent, you do get notified specifically if it's like a half-year course and your student is coming close to meeting the threshold where they're going to lose credit. So they do let you know that that's coming up. But yeah, there are other consequences for older kids. And to go back to the vaping issue, it's my understanding that the vape detectors actually almost work too well, that they're going off when there's hairspray or cologne or perfume. So they definitely work. They're definitely going off a lot. But yeah, they definitely work.
Okay, moving on. Really good to the order. I just want to say good luck to everyone going back to school, teachers, administration, students. Good luck to the parents foremost, and have a great year, and see you soon. That's it. Anyone else?
I have a few quick things as well, and we touched on quite a few of them.
Quick things.
Quick, very fast. Time me. So again, just want to reiterate how proud I am coming out of policy for that committee meeting for 5516 and 5200. I think we did a great job. But I also want to make sure that we're shouting out not only the principals, but the problem-solving teams for those communication strategies. I don't know if everyone had a chance to see, but right in the hallway here, there's already displays that are out regarding that chronic absenteeism and trying to curb that. I received a super informative inclusion of that in my newsletter from Principal Lehman as an HMS parent. So I feel like it's very clear that the work is being done on the building level to try to help us address this. And Dr. Beck hit on this earlier, but I would just like to really reiterate that when it comes to both of these policies, and frankly even vaping, there is a huge onus of responsibility on parents. And in order for us to address our chronic absenteeism rates, in order for us to address cell phone use, there is an onus on parents to make sure you're doing everything you can, not just at home, but to prepare your child outside of the home when it comes to expectations, following rules, guidelines, policy and regulation. We can go as far as we possibly can if that's what we wanted to do, but that wouldn't necessarily curb or change behavior. So again, the onus on parents and the collaborative nature of, we have our board, we have parents, we have students, staff, teachers, administration. It's a huge collaborative unit. So let's just make sure we're keeping that in mind. And I also just wanted to, first of all, commend Chad for leading us in the strategic plan committee. I'm really excited that we're setting board goals for the first time in years. The progress we've made, I'm super excited for those to roll out next month. So great job there. And also for everyone starting to utilize our field service rep through the NJSBA. Kelly was a great addition to that committee. So kudos to you for leading the way. And one other thing quickly, to Lauren's point of donations, the Marching Band Booster Club, some of us have been shouting at that mic for quite a year or two or three for what the marching band deserves in terms of a trailer to get them to and from their competitions. So thank you to the Booster Club for stepping up to make that happen.
And if I could just make one more comment about the policies. I said this, I alluded to it last meeting, and I just want to reiterate it. I really want to thank everybody, specifically the cell phone and attendance policies. I really want to thank everybody that's been involved. The board, the administrative team, the teachers with their input. When policies get revised and updated, typically the way that they are done is through Strauss-Esme. Strauss-Esme, when codes change, statute changes, they send you an update. And basically you accept those changes. There's nothing to talk about. You might have to fill in the blanks on acceptable days of absence or whatever it may be when the Strauss-Esme revisions come across. It takes a lot of hard work and a lot of teamwork and a lot of courage to look at policies that are not on those regular updates, policies that we have in our district that currently affect our students negatively or positively, and really look at how to revise those policies without Strauss-Esme or anybody else telling us to. For us to do it ourselves, it takes a lot, and I really appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank you for saying that. That's very kind, Dr.
Very
Beck.
kind of you.
Also, I wanted to speak a little bit about the website communications. We're still working on that. And to your point, I was actually able to download the app. So I would encourage everybody, at the bottom of the website, you can download it for the new website. You can see the calendar there.
I did get a text from Mr. Hardigan that it is actually up and running, so that's my fault. That's up to the minute.
But I encourage everybody to download it. It's great. And while there is a little bit of a learning curve, like Chad said, there's a lot that we want to focus on in the new site of really bragging about our district. There's a lot of great things going on in our district. We have a lot of great things that are going to happen this year. And there's a lot of good collaboration that's happening on this board and in our building teams, administration. And we're excited to be a part of it. And we wish everybody a really great school year. So thank you.
Anybody else? Motion to adjourn. Chad's tired over there. Okay, all in favor? Aye. Thank you.